How are you going to win if you ain't right within? How are you going to win if you ain't right within? And that is Lauryn Hill from the album Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, and that would have been probably after the time that she had released Sister Act. She was in that movie. Now, Lauryn Hill was one of my favorite artists for a very long time, and somehow has made a resurgence into the zeitgeist, and people are actually, liking her music again, which I think is very important. I mean, for the time, she was very important for the things that she was saying and the types of, messages that she had, and I think it's really awesome to have another black woman, coming back in and being popular again. That was music from the early '90s. And anyway, how are you gonna win if you ain't right within? And that's what this whole podcast is about. And it was nice to, just have my music on shuffle and hear that, and just remind myself that, there are a lot of things that are out of our control, but our ability to be able to control and move past everything that is going on, it's kind of dependent on the environment that you have going on in yourself. That confidence that you have in yourself to be able to move past difficult situations, but also that confidence in yourself to know that you have the tools, or you are working towards developing into the person who can live the life that you want to live. Can avoid, or not avoid, but can go through difficult situations and have the tools to be able to put things into place so that you're not struggling all of the time because you feel like you're inadequate. So how are you going to win if you ain't right within? And that's where we're at. That's where we're at right now. And where we're at right now, I've set my camera a little bit closer. So I feel like it's quite intimate. I feel like you're right in my space, and you can feel the breath as I speak. Don't worry, I brush my teeth, and I'm still flossing. But this is the comfort that we have to be with. And this is kind of like, it kind of reminds me of, when you were doing a presentation, but it wasn't just any presentation. This was a presentation in front of your friends, and it always makes it a little bit more intimate, just quite a bit more intimate, actually. But yeah, anyway, today I've come in, I've planned a little bit, like I've been talking about, but at the same time, there's a few things that have been coming up and things that I've seen in the media, but also the types of things that, you're just taken aback by. You're seeing human interactions at a very large scale, and watching that happen, because usually I'm used to, dealing with people right in front of me and seeing how they react to the types of things I say, or dealing with classes and putting out information and seeing what those people do. And now it's kind of interesting just, being a bit more a part of the media that's going on and seeing the types of reactions that we have, and that stuff that I want to get into today. We're moving away from from specifically talking about the feeling stuff. This comes into it, but I just wanted to address this first before we move on, and it will kind of link in back to the feeling stuff for sure. But until then, it's good to be here. Let's crank into it. All right, the daily yoga still going. A couple of you have asked about my daily yoga practice, and basically I'm still using YouTube, where I'll do roll out on the bed in the morning. I'm lighting a candle now, and I've got a yoga mat, so it sets aside, so I'm not in my room. I'm actually moving to a designated place to be able to do my yoga. So in the morning, like literally, depending on what type of day it is, how much time you want, you can get very specific with the types of yoga you want to do. Now there's probably going to be people who say that's not yoga, but I just want to do some sort of movement that gets me in touch with my breath, which gets me in touch with my body, and also gets out all the kinks of just being like asleep for a very long time. I watch movies where I see people, they get startled in the night, and then they're just able to stand up and just go check out whatever it is. If I get out of bed and I've been lying there for at least an hour, everything hurts. I walk, I have to like waddle a little bit because my body just doesn't work like it used to. So I have to do a minimum of about 10 minutes of just stretching and different things before I can feel like, okay, all right, here we go. My ankles feel like my foot is just fused to my ankle. My knees, my calves, everything's just so tight at the bottom. So to be able to do that has been amazing. But like I said, if it's the middle of the day, if you want like wake up yoga, if you want tight hammies yoga, like you can just type it all in onto YouTube. It's the amazing thing. And it'll just come up and you can say 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I did the longest I've done is I've done just over an hour. And it's awesome. They just take you through it. And I think the nice thing about it is that you feel like they're there with you, but also they're not judging you as you do it. Like you're just doing the best that you can. And I heard that that's what it's like when you actually go into proper yoga studios. They just want you to move as well as you can. Like obviously they're going to be super light years ahead with how they move, but you just got to do what you can do. And I think that's probably the cliche that this podcast kind of tries to get across, is that we're always just one foot in front of the other. But I've been enjoying it. And then on top of that, because of the way that it makes me feel, and just, moving into just thinking differently about how I'm attacking this rugby year, a lot of it was always focusing, obviously, with my coach, Ricky, who had a lot of positive feedback, really, on last week's episode. And I want you to go back and listen to that episode at some point, because he talks about his own practice, how himself as an individual kind of comes into his practice, but also just his reflections on his own mental health journey. Now, I hate using the word mental health because I believe, it's just health in general, it's overall well-being, and our heads are not disconnected from our bodies, like it all plays into each other. But he's like an actual learned person when it comes to exercise and moving people the right way. But at the same time, there was a section in it where he talked about where, like, we're always praised as being brave people for talking about our vulnerabilities, but he said it so well, and it gave me it actually kind of gave me shivers when he said it, but it's just like, it's almost a responsibility, because I know that I can help people if I do this. Like, it would be wrong for me not to do it. And that's kind of, it's not that I'm putting that pressure on myself to continue to come on and do this podcast, but I've been through a lot. I've had a lot of help during this time, and I know there's a lot of people who are almost at that stage, like the pre-contemplation stage, and they're almost into putting it into action, or they're contemplating getting help. And I hope that this can then build that community, or can build some sort of confidence in yourself, or some sort of support for yourself, to make the steps to go get it. And even if that means just messaging me or one of the guests that I've had on, or messaging someone that you think can actually help you, then that's a bonus. And that's not necessarily just for like mental health, or it's not actually just for like things that you struggle with. I mean, it's all things that you struggle with. And speaking of things that I've been struggling with, and thinking about the new direction when it comes to my training and my prep for rugby this year, is around mobility. Now, I've done stretching, I've done yoga, so yoga's more for my mind, but it also helps with my body. But like a designated stretching program, I've never done one of those in my life. I've kind of just, half-assed a 27-second stretch after like a 2-hour weight session, and just been like, that's me. And I've tried ROMWOD, I've tried things where like you do daily stretching. But what I have done now is I'm just going to shout him out. I've just finished 1 week with Coach Troy Savage. Troy Savage. Coach Troy Savage. He just worked with the Indigenous Māori rugby league team, and his philosophy when it comes to stretching and mobility has actually been really cool. So I've just finished the first week. As part of that, like, it's the first time I've actually kind of measured. So as I always say, you have to measure things so that you can manage it. And if you can't measure it, then you can't manage it, because you don't know where your baseline was. You don't actually know what you're doing, or the variables that you're doing to actually achieve some sort of outcomes. So I've started with him, and basically I have 5 days a week. He gives me a 20-minute workout, which some are stretches, some are dynamic movements, and some are actually... So what he's kind of made me believe and made me feel is that, it's not normal to be sore. It's not normal to play through pain. And when it comes to stretching, it's actually, understanding that some of the things that come up are symptoms of weaknesses. And that's it's cool, because that's like, if we think about our overall system, a lot of the ways that we act out when we don't actually deal with things is because, we had a weakness somewhere, so we overcompensated over time, and then something shows up out of nowhere. And that's exactly the same with our body, and where pain comes up. And I'm not a pain expert or anything like that, but now that I've started, working on the weaknesses, or the smaller muscles that aren't necessarily show muscles, and working into different ranges of motion, and actually putting myself into weak positions, I'm starting to see that, okay, I am really weak in those positions, and I'm super strong on other things. So like my squat, my deadlift, my bench, all very, very strong movements. But as soon as you put me at the end range, or a range that I'm not comfortable in, it takes the smallest amount for me to start sweating, to start feeling like I'm going to break. And I've put this down to, I've always known that I've kind of had that deficit in my overall performance, but I feel like because I had to get this assessment, because I had to actually go externally to someone who I don't know, I was a little bit nervous to actually bring that to the light, because now I got someone who doesn't know me, and he's just going to kind of critique me based on the movements that I do, and based on the mobility that I have. But he's been awesome. he messages me directly, asks me how the workouts are going, and it's been a great journey so far. So I'm just investing a little bit into my health there, and I want to be able to move better. I want to be able to have mobility for a long period of time, and I want to be able to enjoy the season without getting injured, or without feeling like I'm just getting by. I want to be thriving. So that's that, and I've probably gone a little bit too much into that. But yeah, now to get into where we're at. And just kind of the main things that have been in the media and kind of my takes on it. And I'm not doing this just to be like trendy or relevant or anything like that, but it's interesting because we get a large scale experiment based on what's there to see where people's minds are really at. And there's a couple of main things, like there's good and there's also like some bad things as well. And there's going to be things that I've watched on Netflix and things that I've seen on Facebook and Instagram, and things that are just trending in general. I don't have Twitter. I don't think I'll ever have Twitter, but I'm pretty sure these things are trending on there as well. So the first one, and this one is just amazing, the Super Bowl halftime show. Now, we've kind of gone past the time where anything can happen and we just have positive, like I just felt like that was awesome. Like reading comments can really take you down into a spiral. And that's like, this is stuff about things that don't even concern me directly. So I've been in the news obviously multiple times because of the research that I was doing. And I've read, a few negative comments about, why is he doing this research? It's silly. You can just do this instead. Like, oh, he doesn't need to get a PhD for that. Like a lot of stuff that just makes me, I'm just like, what the heck? And it hurts. So I've stopped reading comments on my own stuff. But for other things, I don't know why I just just go into comments straight away. But the first thing, so it was in LA or California. And then so what they did was they had a Dr. Dre kind of themed thing. And now everyone's been talking about their childhood, but I've spoken on this podcast multiple times. I've spoken when I've been a guest on other podcasts as well, that the early 2000s, late 90s hip hop era was where I felt I belonged. So if I was to grow up again, I wish I was a little bit older for when that was all happening so that I could actually properly enjoy it. But, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg really proper for that West Coast movement there. The 2001 album and just everything about it. Like there was a part of me that actually started tearing up, and I don't know what it was. Like I couldn't help it. I don't cry in sad parts of movies, but like really beautiful parts for me. And I think that's because I had so much nostalgia, and I was just thinking about, just how excited they must have been to actually be doing that again. Like it reminded me of the Up Smoke tour that they did, Up in Smoke tour, which they all did, bar 50 Cent, Mary J. Blige, and Kendrick Lamar. But like they all got together and they toured, and that was the album that they can kind of come out at that time. But watching that, it was just amazing, just to see 30 years later, they still have the same support and they still have the same just energy and love of just being there and being able to perform. Now, it was amazing. I really, really enjoyed it. If that's not your cup of tea, I think you can also appreciate just like the difference that Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, 50 Cent, Mary J. Blige, and Kendrick Lamar have had on hip hop as a whole. But also just how timeless those songs are to be able to come back on and still be able to rock the place. And I just think, there's a lot of background stuff that you never would have known if we didn't have social media. So that's kind of where we want to get into for today's conversation. Now, before I even talk about social media and stuff, like it's all fed to us now. Do you remember back in the day where you had to go to not the supermarket, you had to go to the video shop, like Amalgamated Video, Blockbuster, Video Easy, Civic? Do you remember those things? Where you'd go in and they'd have just a wide range of things. They'd have like DVDs, VCR, videos, like games. And remember when you had to go, on Tuesdays you could get 2 for 1, and some things when they came out brand new, they were overnight and you had to hire it. It's like going to the library, but for books, for videos and games. And just the excitement that you could get. And when you saw something, instead of getting a preview of what the video would be, you grabbed it, you liked the look of it, you liked the look of maybe there's 2 actors on the front. Oh, what's this? Lost in Space? Oh, or Lost in Space wasn't even one. Like War of the Worlds. Wow, look, it's robots on it. You grab it, You turn it around and you read about it. So you're making an informed decision on what you want to be watching. Not Netflix now, not YouTube now. It's all based on what you've been looking at before, what people want you to see, how much money different people are paying for their advertisements or for their things to be bumped up the line so that you can watch it and it just appears in front of you. You only get like 12 options that are coming around all the time. When you go into the video store, you could honestly take out your whole, like, Tuesday afternoon, I got nothing going in. I'm going to the video store for a couple of hours. And you just go around looking for the things that you want. And you always knew that you could come back the next week if you didn't like it, but you had to go through it all because you didn't have that option as soon as you left. As soon as you left, that's all you had. And my worst was that sometimes I'd get a game that I'd been wanting to play for a while, or the game that I wanted wasn't there, so I got one that kind of like filled the interim period, and you just had to play it. You didn't like it? Oh well, you just played it and then you made yourself like it. That's why I think I have a greater appreciation for music or for some of the movies that I could only watch when that would happen. And that's probably why some people from that era watch movies and know movies off by heart, because you just watched it over and over and over again because that was the only movie that you could watch. Anyway, the video store, where we could choose, where we could be in control of the media that we took in. But now you're just getting it fed to you. And a lot of the stuff that I've seen, and it kind of shows me where people are at, but also just like when things become memes and then people, jump onto the popular opinion, and that popular opinion is based on the types of things that you've seen before, the types of things that are coming around. And, this whole Kanye West thing, I've been a huge Kanye fan for a very long time, and I do admit he's a little bit wacky every now and then. But the way that people attack this dude, like, he's probably not safe, for sure. But Mans has been breaking down over a relationship. Mans has been breaking down, for a few years about like his mom, losing his mom, going through all those types of things, and then he becomes a meme as soon as he starts crying. That's funny. It's really funny when you don't reflect on it, but then we probably say, like, why aren't men talking? Because people make fun of them. Right? So there's probably other things that come into all of that sort of stuff, but if you're going to get turned into a meme every time you want to like express some sort of emotion, why would you do it? Like I think that's the crazy thing about the internet, is that we're getting fed all these different things and we're starting to see the way that people react to it. So now that we see how other people react, we have that mob mentality where we're like, okay, that's the common way to think about this. So that's how I need to think. That's how I need to align myself. Now, what I'm not trying to say here is that we should get off social media altogether, because there are some goods that can happen. But I think when you are reading media, and it's probably a little bit different if you've actually, if you read a lot for a very long period of time, and you're a bit more aware of the types of things that come into all these things. We are people who are cavemen. We're based on cavemen technology, and we've been given. Like, our hardware is hardwired to going to hunt for food, come back, and just very, very basic things. And the tribe that we affiliate with are the like couple of people around you, maybe like a couple hundred people max. But now we're like going out and we're exposed to the rest of the world. So these are people with opposing opinions. These are people who, just think so differently than you do. So there's a lot of people who will attack what you're doing. I just don't think there will be anything that we could ever agree on. And we see that when people say, like, okay, this is just to show that people are out there to be contrarian. So, like, if you say this is a photo of a stone, and it's literally a stone, but then people are like, actually, it's more of a rock. Because we have so many different opinions on things, we're just going to have a lot of kind of people who just are negative for the sake of being negative. And then we actually have troll farms. So there's actually people who get paid to go on and polarize people by putting out statuses, putting out comments to actually, be the contrarian to one of the points that are being made. But anyway, I digress, and I just think it's really, really important that when we go on with anything, really, when people say stuff to you, when you're reading anything, just to always be mindful of the types of things that you are reading, and just to, think about just have a little compassion for the types of things that are happening. And it's actually sad to see, when people die or when all that sort of stuff happens, and then we see a headline that's just a horrible headline, but then you see the reactions on Facebook that people have, and it's like a laughy face. And then they're like, oh, they shouldn't have been there anyway. Someone just died. Like, the main point of this is that someone died. And it's like, whoa, this is whack. And then everyone has an opinion and everyone has to say. So anyway, that's kind of where we're going to get into with this episode. And that's, I think, why this is happening for me is because this is something that I've had to be a little bit more aware of recently, because I do feel like it takes a lot of my energy, reading through the comments and actually getting really quite upset that people believe the types of things that they are saying, or are people believing the types of things that they are saying? And that's what I'm doing now, is I'm stepping back and I'm seeing the types of people who are saying different things, because it really does have a huge effect on you, especially if it starts to influence the way that you think. Because we all have a sense. There's a little bit of agency that we can have, but at the same time, it's really easy to kind of fall into the trap of just believing the types of things that are coming out and that people are saying. So before I go into the final thing and the main thing that I really wanted to speak about today, another thing that I watched on Netflix was the Tinder Swindler. The Tinder Swindler. Now, on this, spoiler alert, basically what happens was there was a guy who set up some sort of Ponzi scheme. I won't go into it because I think if you watch this, you'll be like, holy moly, how the heck did he do that? But the premise is there's a guy who uses Tinder, which is the app that people go on to match up and have dating and do talking. And on that, he basically, gets these people to love him, gets into relationships with these different people, and then uses them for money. So he's basically like the walking version of the emails that say, I'm your Ugandan prince, I need, you're part of my family, if you just give me your card, I'll give you money. So he was the walking version, where he'd actually meet up with these different people. And this Ponzi scheme was unreal. Like the amount... But there's a few questions for me. So if you watch it, there's a few things that I still feel a little bit unanswered. My first one is, what happened to his friends? I want to know how the heck, like, he set this whole thing up, basically, where he's just like, I'm going to be the main guy, and then I'm going to have these other people who are part of the whole thing. And now they didn't get to comment on it. But man, I think the first thing that people are going to say when they watch that thing is like, how could women be so silly to trust this guy? And I just think, in most cases, and I'm the same, in most cases, when I meet people and when I fall in love and when I want to love, I love love. I love the feeling of it. I love, I go into things thinking, this is it. This is the rest of my life. I'm going in with the intention to commit and to get married to this person and to have babies and do everything for the rest of my life. If you started to feel that way, you would you would probably do some of the things. Now, I don't have the sort of money to be able to do what they did and fund a lot of his extravagant purchases, but I'll try something, maybe try pick apples or something, like pick up another job to try and help financially. So I think that's that first thing. Also, he's probably picking out a certain class of people who money is a little bit more accessible, but the psychology behind it, like, it makes you just think. Instead of fucking thinking about why those girls are so silly, think about how narcissistic and nasty that guy is, right? So this comes into it again, where like we need to be thinking about the psychology of different people, the behaviors of different people, and how people can do that sort of thing. If you have someone who's like knowingly, willingly telling you that they love you, all that sort of stuff, but then like they really don't care about the repercussions or the consequences that happen to you, that's some next level psychopathic shit. Like, holy shit. And those are the types of questions that we should be asking. And those are the things that I think still people, are so really so willing to blame the victim, as opposed to looking at the environment that they were put into to become the victim and to actually take the actions that ended up happening. So I mean, I think this kind of came at the right time. This, in terms of Netflix documentaries, I think this is going to be the one that, because I was so over Netflix. Like, I started watching Manifest a little bit, which is a little bit, I'll give that another review at some point. But like, Netflix in itself, I was just like, this is getting trash. And then this one came out, and it was literally, I think this is the one that has kind of made me keep my subscription. I actually used my dad's subscription. But anyway, if I was to cancel my subscription, this would be the one that would have kept me on. And I have a feeling this was made by the same people, and this is a documentary that I've talked about on here before, but the Don't Fuck With Cats. Similar thing, where they just look at someone who's just so psychopathic, and in their mind, the world is so like for them, and it works very well. But anyway, yeah. So that was the Tinder Swindler. That was some next level, like crazy type of psychopath. And just, yeah, man. Whew. To watch that and just to know that there are people like that out there, but also that's just kind of the importance of raising awareness of a different thing. So like, the guy only got 5 months. I think in the documentary they talk about him. He only got 5 months when they found out about it. But then it's like, it's difficult because you're like that was in Israel where he's from for different things that he had done previously, but it wasn't necessarily for the actions that he had taken or he had done against these women who put him away. So yeah, Tinder Swindler, go check it out. I thought it was really entertaining. I usually don't like those sorts of things. I usually, I like learning about different things rather than watching about different people. But that was next level. That was just to watch someone go through and do what he did is just kind of amazing. Amazing in the worst way, if that makes any sense. Right, so here we go. This is, I think, where we tune in to the types of things that we need to be a bit more aware of. And also the awareness that we need to have of our surroundings in general. Now, I'm a little bit hesitant to speak about this in its entirety, but what I want to do is kind of crystallize it down into the main points of it all. And this is where it's really easy to get polarized and it's really easy to get pulled to either side. Now, there was an incident that happened here in Otago at a girls' school where there was a Muslim female who was attacked, and I think it was a group of girls who were attacked, and they had their scarves pulled off, and they were called racial slurs, really. And this was a bunch of like 13 and 14-year-old girls who were the attackers. And basically, what's happened, which is awesome, is that we've had a lot of awareness raised for this whole thing. So you might have seen pages going around, even Bella Hadid, and Sunny Bill, Helen Clark, a lot of really high status people are getting on board. And I think that's awesome. I think it's awesome that we raise awareness of these sorts of things, just to know that, yes, here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, we still have a very racist background. The key things to take away from this, and I think this is where it gets ugly, and this is where you read comments and you read the types of things that people want. So firstly, the page that's going around is talking about getting justice and signing a petition, which I'm all for. We need to get some sort of repercussion for the people who are the attackers, but also in the environment that people are allowing this sort of behavior to happen. Now, for me, it's a difficult one because if I think about it, like obviously the action itself is absolutely disgusting, and there is no place for that in our society. And when we think about racism, this is probably the most, like this is when we think about racism, we think about the overt actions, people actually calling people racial slurs, people beating someone because of their ethnic background and their religious beliefs as well. Now, where we don't think about the racism is where we have systemic inequities, which are continuing to be, and to be honest, when we talk about justice, we need to be speaking about justice on a whole kind of ethnic level or minority level, where a lot of the systemic inequities that are still here, we don't have people who have the same energy towards those sort of injustices because we have people who don't believe that we have inequity in this country. So we believe we're in an egalitarian society where if you work towards something, you will be rewarded. But as we know, and as I've kind of found out the hard way by being an ethnic minority and actually being an indigenous person of this country, it's not like that. There are privileges that certain people get. But before I go off task a little bit, the types of things. So when we want justice, and what types of things do we want? Like in my mind, in my eyes, like, do we want, I just believe that, there should be the proper repercussions and that the Ministry of Education, the police, the parents, the community should all be involved. It sucks that the Muslim community and the girls who are, Muslim there are now feeling uncomfortable. That's disgusting. It's disgusting that we've even got to that point. So what is it that we actually want when we ask for justice? And I think there've been some really cool pages, and the way that Sunny Bill's gone about it, some of the old girls from Otago Girls High School are actually coming out and saying, like, we need to start supporting these different. They're actually being supporting these different groups, and they're actually being direct with the types of things that we need to do in terms of the support. Now, what's not helping is that people are just spreading the stuff and saying, we need to close down the school's disgusting, boycott the school, boycott the principal is allowing this to happen by not addressing the types of things. And these are people who have no understanding of the context whatsoever. So in terms of having some compassion for the overall thing, of course, we're going to feel absolutely hurt and devastated that this has happened to that girl, her family, and her communities. Now, what happens to the girls who were the attackers? I think they were stood down. But there is something going wrong with these girls for them to be attacking like this. The parents, or maybe the lack of parental support, their understanding of what this can actually do. And now probably this has, by getting the amount of spread that it has, it's probably ruined their world quite a bit, because now people know who they are. And the disgusting thing that I saw is just that we're not addressing the problem, which is that we still have systemic inequities that people don't want to see, and people only want to kind of share this sort of thing because it kind of rids them of that feeling that they actually do undertake racist acts daily. By reproducing different stereotypes, by not seeing that there are systemic problems, and we see this one and then they jump on board and then it makes them feel better about themselves. Asking to find out who these girls are so that people can go and attack them is no better. And we're talking about people who probably have a really harsh upbringing, and if they were to get expelled, if something bad was to happen to them, we already have an issue with mental health for Māori people in Aotearoa. And sadly, I think some of the attackers were Māori, but if we were to expel them, and if we were, that's the rest of their life. To be honest, their lives or their worlds have probably ended now that it's got as much support as it has. And the types of, there's the positive support, but then there are also the people who are going after blood. And there are people who are going to, when we talk about justice, everyone has different ideas of what justice is. So my scary thought is that these girls who were the attackers, obviously, when people are like, they're just going to get a slap on the hand. If anything worse happens to them, we're probably going to lose them out of the system, the education system, and there are more people who become statistics in terms of people who didn't get the opportunity for education or didn't get the opportunity to actually go forward and complete any schooling because they were forgotten before they even got there. Now that's probably too empathetic to the people who they do need to get their justice. They do, but what that looks like needs to be determined by the people who are actually level-headed in this entire thing. But I really do hope that the community and the family can actually start to find some sort of resolution, and the school does come to help to actually spread that awareness within the school that this is something that we will not tolerate. It's something that we should not tolerate in our own communities, but at the same time, bring that sort of energy when it comes to all systemic inequities. Now, I'm not trying to, whataboutism and what about this, what about that, but I'm just saying that I think this is going to continue to happen if we don't even acknowledge that there is something bigger at play here. We are allowing other sorts of racism to happen every single day by not addressing those, by continuing to believe that Māori and Pacific people are not as intelligent as other people, or believing that the why they did this was because they were Māori, as opposed to looking at the way that they were brought up, or looking at the sort of support that they actually have, or looking at their backgrounds and where they actually got to be able to do this. And I personally don't think, just from what I've read, that this is something that is ingrained in the school, because obviously this was in the first 3 or 4 days of school being there. So I don't know what type of culture that they're breeding in that school, but I think some sort of compassion and some sort of empathy towards all the people that were involved. And also, I do believe that the school is probably doing the best that they can do. And unless someone wants to come forward and actually say this is what we need to start doing to ensure that this thing doesn't happen anymore, I don't think that responsibility falls directly just on the principal, because from what I know, they got the Ministry of Education involved, they got the police involved, they got the communities involved, and the families of both attacker and victim. So for now, hang tight. Definitely offer your support where possible, but when you are asking for justice, try to be aware of the type of justice that you are kind of feeding into, and understand what it is that you are doing. So when you share this sort of thing, and this comes to every single thing past this point, if something happens, learn a little bit about it, start to try to figure out both sides of the system, and then also think about the types of justice and the types of messaging that you are putting out, because as I said, like, if you are trying to fight fire with fire, all that we're going to do is just maintain these inequities, because we're just going to look at it, we're going to deal with it, and then someone's going to get angry, and then because of that angry outburst, people are going to be like, they deserved it because this is how they react. And this is where I want to go on for next week. So how to be angry better. Right, so we can be angry, we can be dissatisfied with how everything is going, but how we react is going to have a huge say in where we end up going and what actually ends up happening with the overall problem, right? Because if too many people get involved and too many people get too upset, or too many people get too, if the actions are just way too big, I think it kind of takes away from the actual problem and starts to move it away to people who are a bit more selfish and wanted to make it a little bit more about them rather than the problem that is at hand. I stumbled like heck to get through that, basically because I'm still trying to formulate where I'm at with it, but I do think where we can kind of get at is that we need to be a bit more aware, of course, that all these different things are happening, but when we ask for justice, I don't think fighting violence with violence is the way to go, and I do think that we need to be aware of the overall racism that is happening here in this country. And this isn't whataboutism, and this isn't me saying, okay, look, that's only happening. Well, actually, no, that's not important. This is more important. I just believe that stuff continues to happen, and we build these cultures because people only see that as racism, whereas there are other systems at play that actually maintain racism every single day. So anyway, stumbled my way through that. Next week I'll be talking about how to be angry better, so that we can have a better understanding between yourself as well as the person who you feel has transgressed against you. But other than that, love you all. Please, I'm expecting a lot of messages about this episode because of that last particular take that I had. Please, I would like to learn more, and I would like to have a discussion with anyone who doesn't agree or feels like maybe I didn't touch on it correctly, and that's fine. I definitely haven't had as much time to think about it, but I feel like the more that I think about it, the more I start talking my way out of it, so that I don't actually end up discussing it or addressing it. But anyway, I love you all. As always, appreciate you all. Love you all, and we'll be hearing from another guest next week, and then hopefully we'll have a few more guests coming in the next little bit. So anyway, take care.